Hi guys, and welcome to this Holy Bread Orban tutorial. We're so excited to finally be able to present this to you guys, and hopefully you guys can give this a go, and we'd love to see how your Orban turns out. If you guys have any questions after watching this video, feel free to contact any of your servants who will be able to answer any questions you may have, or be able to ask any of the Orban servants who will be able to answer your question. Now, let's go straight into the materials you'll need to be able to make Orban. Firstly, you'll need a food scale to be able to make sure your measurements are accurate. And you'll also need a food mixer just to mix in all your ingredients. For the first two materials, they're not essential, they're just helpful. You'll also need a kitchen towel, wooden skewers or some form of stick just to use as an Orban stand, a flat spatula to be able to pick up and drop your Orbans, as well as an oven with some oven trays. And like we said earlier, it is not a problem at all if you do not have a food scale or a food mixer. You may just need to alter your measurements slightly until your dough is right. So, step 1, we gather all our ingredients together. So for this stage, we'll need the food scale just to take all our measurements. With that, we'll be measuring out 500 grams of flour, which we can separate into two bowls, one with 75 grams and one with 425 grams. We'll also need 9 grams of fresh yeast, or 1 sachet of dry yeast, which you can buy from your supermarket, 300 ml of warm water, and 50 ml of ice or cold water. Like you see here, we've got our things ready, and we hope you do too. Be prepared to get dirty, but have lots of fun as you try and make Orban at home. But before we start, did you know that the ingredients and the process in Orban all have symbolism? The flour represents humanity, all of us. The water represents Christ, who said is the living water. The yeast represents sin, and the heat represents Christ's death on the cross. What we're going to see soon is that the yeast will cause the dough to become bigger as sin grows in the world. But after Christ, the living water mixes everything together and is put in the oven and dies on the cross, the yeast cells actually die in the oven, and we get our nice and soft Orban. Now, our next step is we're going to prepare a base mixture. For this, we'll need 75 grams of flour, 50 ml of warm water, and 50 ml of the ice or cold water, which we listed in the ingredients earlier. What you see now in the video is that we've added the flour component and the hot water together until it mixes and forms a mashed potato texture. We're starting to see now that that texture is starting to mix into what we want to get. Some nice mashed potato feeling. And like you can see, I'm now holding a small example for you guys. Once you get this, you know it's ready. Now we have to cool down this mixture by pouring in that cold water. And what will happen when we pour in the cold water is that we see that it starts to thin out a little bit, and it'll continue to mix through the machine. Now that we have the base mixture ready, we're ready to make our dough. For this step, you'll need 425 grams of flour, 250 ml of warm water, the fresh yeast, 9 grams, or the 1 sachet of dry yeast, which you can get from your supermarket, and the food mixer. Remember, if you do not have a food mixer, you can just use your hands. Now, what we see here is Ammo measuring out his yeast. So for every kilo we have roughly 12 to 14 grams, but in this instance we're using 9 grams of fresh yeast. For your recipes at home, or the 7 grams of dry yeast. And we can see Ammo is starting to now mix that throughout the water until we dissolve all of the yeast particles and it becomes fully integrated into the water. Now, we're going to slowly pour this yeast and water mixture into the bowl where we have our base mixture. And what we want to do is we want this to become nice and watery but fully mixed through. Now, once this is mixed, we can begin to add our flour in. Note, it may get a little difficult to deal with. If it becomes too wet, add a little more flour, but if it's too dry, feel free to add some water slowly until the mixture's right. Let's watch now as we see this dough come together. So what we see is we're nearly there. But like you see now, Ammo thinks this Orban is still a little bit too stiff. So we'll add some water and get it mixing again. Now we can see that our dough is nearly finished. For those who have a mixer, it's a good clue that you can kind of see all the residue come together within the dough. That's how we know it's nearly there. And now, with this dough ready, we can just take it out of the mixer, tap it with a bit of water just to keep it nice and moist. Now, we're ready to mold our dough balls. We just need the dough we've just prepared, a food scale just to make sure that each Orban is the same size, but not necessary, and a kitchen towel. So let's see how we get this done. Now we see that Ammo first put flour in his hands. This will help us to deal with the dough. A little dough on the food scale will also help just to make sure it doesn't stick. Feel free to make them as small or as big as you like. We'll now see how Ammo uses his hands to mold these dough pieces into balls. Once all your dough balls are ready, line them up and cover them with a kitchen towel for them to rise. We won't need to leave the dough balls for too long. We will then begin to take the first dough ball and prepare it into the shape of an Orban. But to finalize this step and shape our dough, we will also need some wooden skewers or sticks to use as a stamp for our Orban. Let's watch now as we see Ammo take the dough balls and begin to shape them into an Orbana. For those at home without an Orban stamp, there are other options including making your Orban in the shape of a cross or using your wooden skewer to draw a cross in the middle of your Orban instead. Once all of the Orbanas are ready, they can be placed on the side and covered with a kitchen towel, again just to allow them to rise. They will need approximately 60 minutes to 90 minutes depending on the temperature in the room. The warmer the room, the less time it will take. This leads us to step 6, where we just want to rest the Orbanas and the dough. All we need now is to sit and wait patiently whilst they continue rising. In this example, we see that Ammo can do a small little test with his finger to check if they've now risen. He dents it slightly with his finger, and if the Orbanas have fully risen, you'll be able to see the actual dent come up. At this stage again, it has not fully risen. We'll check again soon. But did you know the Orban stamp has many meanings? The large cross in the middle resembles Jesus. The 12 crosses around the middle represent the 12 disciples. And the Coptic words around the circumference of the stamp mean Holy God, Holy Mighty, Holy Immortal. Now, we're finally ready to cook our Orban. We preheat our oven to 180 degrees. It is always a good idea to place your oven trays in there prior so that they can cook on the bottom of the Orban as well. Now we see Ammo getting his stick ready to insert 5 holes around the main cross in the middle of the Orbana. We'll go through what these mean in our final Did You Know? Let's watch how Ammo does it. We are now starting to line these up in our tray. We can see Ammo is putting them in nice and carefully just to make sure that they do not touch each other on the tray. With those ready, we now just put them in the oven. In the middle of the cooking process, it would be good if you take them out just to redo the holes. In the cooking process, these holes that we made earlier may actually close, so that's why we do them a second time in the middle of the process. Now, it's good to check these every 5 to 7 minutes just to see how they're going. These take about 30 minutes in total, but some may cook quicker than others. Once some of them have that nice golden brown color, we'll start taking them out of the oven, placing them under a towel and piece of plastic to keep them warm. Which leads into our final step, which is just to rest your Orban. This allows the Orban to stay warm once it's just come out of the oven. After leaving them for a little while, let's see what they all look like. Now, for our final Did You Know? Did you know that the 5 holes in the Orban resemble the 5 sufferings of Christ on the cross? These are the 3 nails in his left hand, his right hand, and his feet, the crown of thorns, and the spear wound on his sides. Did you also know that the Orban is round to show that God has no beginning and no end? The Orban does not have any corners, so there is no starting and finishing point. On that, we hope you enjoyed the video. Well done and congratulations. Don't forget to take a photo of your holy bread or Orban and send it to your servants. We'd love to see it. We hope you enjoyed this tutorial and look forward to seeing how your Orban turns out.